All right, welcome to another review video. This one's going to be completely freestyle. No notes on the screen. So operations with proportions and percents. So first thing is when you have a proportion, that means you have two fractions that are equal to each other. So this is actually a type of equation, which in the review videos I haven't talked about just yet, but we'll roll with it. A over B equals C over D. If you are trying to rearrange or solve a proportion, there's one special, amazing, cool trick you can use. You can always follow the golden rule, which means you multiply both sides by the same thing. So if I multiply this side by B, and I also multiply this side by B, on the left-hand side, it kind of disappears. And on the right-hand side, it just pops up in the numerator. It's kind of like I diagonally moved this up here. Cool. If I multiply both sides by D, this one cancels out. And it seems to have like magically just popped up over here. So the result is you kind of take the two denominators and you move them diagonally up and across to the other numerator. This is a technique called cross multiply. It's technically just a manifestation of the golden rule. You're just doing the same operation on both sides. But if you have a ratio A over B equals C over D, then you can write A times D, that's the diagonal across this way, equals B times C, which is the diagonal across this way. So cross multiply is a nice thing to do. And once you're here, I mean, it depends where the variable is, right? Do you want to solve, what variable are you solving for? But it's almost always the perfect first step to get you on your way. And then you can divide by whatever you need to divide by to solve your equation. So let's just do a really easy example. 2 over 3 equals 7 over x, for example. If I cross multiply, I get 2x equals 21. Let's take a look at that and make sure it makes sense. I did the x up here times the 2, so 2x. The 3 up here times the 7, so 21. Now to solve for x, it's like, cool, just divide by 2, divide by 2. Half of 21 is 10.5. When you have proportions, there are, of course, other ways to do this. You can try to look and find ratios and all that kind of stuff. But this is a kind of always works method, no matter how gross the numbers are, no matter whether you have fractions or negative numbers or decimals, or heaven forbid, variable expressions in more than one place. Let me just knock your socks off here and show you what I mean. 2x minus 4 over x minus 3 equals 6x over x squared plus 5. Okay, I have no idea. I'm not going to solve this, but I just want to illustrate the idea. Like you can't just look at that and be like, oh yeah, cool. Like that's twice as big on the top, so that's going to be twice as big on the bottom. But you can be very methodical about it and multiply this entire denominator by this entire numerator, and then multiply this entire denominator by this entire numerator, and get a very like large and complex algebraic expression, which you can then start chipping away at using all kinds of other math techniques that you're going to learn in Algebra 1 and beyond. So the key takeaway with proportions is, hey, if it's easy numbers, do it in your head, of course. But if it's not easy numbers, this idea of cross multiply is the absolute most useful one that you can use when you're solving proportions or equations that have fractions on both sides. Okay, all that said, let's look at percents and say, why the heck are percents mixed into a lesson on proportions? Well, a percent is something out of 100, which makes it a fraction, which makes it a proportion. So if I say 10% of something, that's the same as saying 10 out of 100. If I say 33%, that's the same, that's the same as saying 33 out of 100. So a lot of times you can solve equations about percentages by using a proportion. Let me give you an example, like a word problem. 40 is what percent of 16 let's do a bigger number, of 55. Okay, so 40 is what percent of 55? So what we're looking at is we have 40 out of 55, and we want to know what percent is that. So a percent is something out of 100. So 40, 50 out of 55 is what out of 100? And you say, hey, cool, this is a proportion. I can cross multiply. So if I cross multiply here, I get 4,000. If I cross multiply here, I get 55x. And then I divide both sides by 55. And here's an example where you just whip out a calculator, because why waste our time? 4,000 divided by 55 equals 72.72 forever. That's kind of cool. 72.72 repeating percent. You could even round it to 73% if you want, depending on the situation or the context of what you're doing. So say you're doing free throws for basketball and you make 40 out of 55, you're roughly a 73% shooter for your basketball free throws. Let me go back to this problem and tackle it kind of a different way. Once I've set it up like this, you can say, hey, I've got an X right here, and I want to solve this equation for X. The golden rule says all I need to do is get rid of the divide by 100 by multiplying both sides by 100. And you might notice, well, hey, if I do that, I'm going to get 100 times 40 in the numerator, and then I'm going to have a 55 in the denominator. And lo and behold, when we did cross multiply and divide, that's exactly what we got. So cross multiply and divide, it's not the only way. It's not even always the best way, but it definitely does work. And it can be seen to be equivalent to other things that you might try. So I don't want to say that you shouldn't try other things. Absolutely try other things. But if you're not sure, or you want to go back and do it a way that is a tried and true and guaranteed to work, when you have a proportion, you can solve it by cross multiply. And when you have a percent problem, you can very often set it up as a proportion. Okay, that is your review of proportions and percents. Keep at it, keep working hard, and keep getting better every day. I'll see you guys in class.